I was in one of those rages, and I forced myself out of the apartment, and I went to get in my truck. And instead of getting in my truck, I went around the side of the building. That's where her boyfriend was, or the guy she was dating, and he was staying there with his sister in the same building. And I went back and I knocked on the door, and before somebody answered, I pushed it open. I seen him across the room, and I just went right through the living room and across the coffee table and had him by the throat. And his sister happened to be dating an LAPD, which happened to be there. They both had me pinned on the floor.
This is The Bottom Line. I'm Gary Thiemann in Los Angeles. Red flags were everywhere. Life's in session, and Steve W. was absent most of the time. A cavalier attitude with booze and life in general led Steve on a path of destruction. Drunk driving would lead to run-ins with police. And of course, things were not going well at home. However, Steve's life was about to change, for the good.
Hello, my name's Steve W. I'm an alcoholic, born and raised in West Virginia. Recollection of one of my first drunks was in a bowling alley parking lot. And I was passed out in the back seat when I was learning how to drink, throwing up a lot, always with a lot of pain in the stomach, But I was laying in the back seat of that automobile, and I felt this warm stuff running down my face. And I looked up, and my good friend Tom was urinating on my head. And I jumped up out of there, and I chased him across that parking lot. And if I'd have caught him, I would have killed him. But, that was one of my first drunks. And I left West Virginia, and I got drafted into the Army and I did an 18-month tour in Korea, and I was just totally nuts. Didn't have a lick of sense. Caught the venereal disease 10, 11, 12 times. Drank anything that was in sight. Smoked anything that was in sight. And I was just as wild as they possibly can be. One night I was in I remember being in a foxhole in the main barrier position. This is a main barrier position. They got all the way across Korea. It separates South Korea and North Korea. And they stationed 3 or 4 soldiers in each foxhole, and they're about 75 yards apart. And we was all sitting there smoking this stuff, and all at once a flare goes off in front of the foxhole down in front, next to me. And you're not supposed to be out of your foxhole after it gets dark. And I looked down there, and I seen a man standing down there. And I jumped out of the foxhole, and I had this automatic weapon, and I hollered, "Halt, halt, Chung-ji, Chung-ji." And this guy took off running. And I thought, oh my God, I'm thinking he might be one of ours, but he's running. I had to shoot him. And I opened fire and seen tracers land all around him. And he hit the ground, and I heard somebody scream, "Don't shoot." And so I said, okay. And that made me funny. I started laughing, and I couldn't stop. My CO's trying to call me on the radio and the telephone. And then finally he says, "What the hell's wrong with you, Wilson?" And I said, "I don't know, sir. It just struck me funny." And, but I spent 18 months over there. And like I said, I didn't have a lick of sense. And then I came back to the States, and it seemed like I was always looking for a companion, and I was always very lonely, and of course I drank a lot. I remember one time it was right around Christmas, and I had that real lonely feeling, and I was drinking. I had a bottle of Black Velvet, and I'd been drinking on that all night, and there was this fella that needed a ride up to Charleston, a place called Fry's Alley, which is a real rough area of Charleston. I said, well, I'll do, I figured I would do somebody a favor, and that would get me out of myself. And I was trying to be of service, in other words. I gave him a ride to Charleston, and he had to direct me, left, right, or what, to get to his place. And I dropped him off, and then I got lost in Charleston. It was like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And I kept driving around in circles, looking for something that looked familiar. and nobody was out on the streets. And I made stopped at this one stop sign, and I started to make a right turn. I started turning the steering wheel, and after I got out on the street, I continued turning the steering wheel, and I hit a telephone post head on. And the steam started roaring from my car, and I backed up, and I still started driving, trying to get out of Charleston. All once this cop pulls over beside me as I'm driving, and I just pull off the side of the road, open up the door, open up his door, and I just got in the car, in the back seat, because I knew I was going to go to jail. And he told me, asked me what I hit. I said I hit a telephone pole, and he called around and see if there had been any telephone poles knocked down, and they couldn't find it. And so he seemed like a real nice cop, a real nice guy. And he was so nice, I thought, I seen a telephone booth way up ahead, I said, won't you stop up here and I'll call my dad and he can come and get me. And he pulled over at the telephone booth, and let me out, and I went and I called my dad. He was drunker than I was, so he couldn't come and get me. And so I went back out on the street, and there was not a car in sight. And all at once I seen these headlights coming, and I run out in the middle of the street, and started waving my hands in the air to stop this car. And it was the same cop that just let me off a few minutes earlier. So I got back in the car, and I told him, take me out of this town. He told me only a certain area to patrol, so he could only take me so far, So he took me to this service station, and these guys in the service station told me that I was lucky that was the cop that picked me up, because he was the nicest cop in town. But anyway, I still tried to get home, and I tried to get on a Greyhound bus. They said I was too drunk. I wasn't going to get on one of their buses. I ended up hitchhiking out of Charleston. I finally got home and went looking for my car the next day. It took all day to find it. But I'm going to move on here to my last drunk. I was married, and I had a 2-year-old, or about a 1.5-year-old son. And me and my wife was separated. And I was trying to accept the idea, we was going to get a divorce, and I was picking up my son on Sunday for about 2 hours. It's about all I could handle because of the emotional state I was in. And this one day I brought him home and took him in the house, and she had a car, and it had been broken down, and I happened to have 2 vehicles, and she considered it community property, and she said she wanted one of those cars. I said, if you want a car, have your boyfriend buy you a car. And she got real angry and attacked me, and when she did, I grabbed her wrist and I twisted it real bad, and I think that's kind of what I wanted her to do. And anyway, I was in one of those rages, and I forced myself out of the apartment, and I went to get in my truck. And instead of getting in my truck, I went around the side of the building. That's where her boyfriend was, or the guy she was dating, and he was staying there with his sister in the same building. And I went back and I knocked on the door, and before somebody answered, I pushed it open. I seen him across the room, and I just went right through the living room and across the coffee table and had him by the throat. And his sister happened to be dating an LAPD, which happened to be there. They both had me pinned on the floor, and I surrendered, and they let me go. And as I walked out of there, I called my wife was walking up the back steps, and I called her every kind of whore I could think of. And that was my bottom. And I was calling her and trying to give her more money for child support. I was just doing anything, and I was still going to the bars, and but I couldn't get drunk, and I really couldn't get sober. I was just really at a bottom. And I called my friend Gil, that had been talking this program. I worked with Gil for many years, and he'd been sober for about 20 years, and so he was the guy I called, and he took me to my first meeting.
A moment of clarity for the alcoholic takes on many forms. For Steve W., it was loss of companionship. It was in Glendale, California that Steve was to stumble onto a legendary AA meeting at a place called the Windsor Club. It was here that Steve started on his sober journey. That would come at a price as well.
I started going over to the Windsor Club there in Glendale, and I remember some guy sitting next to me asked me why I was there. and I told him I wasn't making enough money. I figured if I made more money, I could solve a lot of my problems. And I really didn't have any idea how sick I was. But they used to, they still do, ask that you have at least 24 hours of sobriety before you can participate. I didn't even know the definition of sobriety. And I was sitting there thinking, well, a meeting lasts for an hour and a half, so if I go to a meeting today, it's an hour and a half. If I go to one tomorrow, it's an hour and a half. And I'm sitting there counting up all of these, and I figured I could get 24 hours of sobriety that way. And I bought the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. The only reason I bought it was because they read portions of chapter 3 and 5 in the 12 traditions, and I knew they was going to ask me to read this one day. So I actually went home and I practiced on these 3 parts, and actually taped my voice. Got a tape recorder and taped myself reading this stuff, so I sounded just good enough. That was my ways of going to any lengths, for sobriety, because I found that I really liked Alcoholics Anonymous. I was sober about a month, and I was walking the streets there in Burbank, and my wife was dating she was in Al-Anon, and she was dating this alcoholic in the same place. And and it was just tearing me up, emotionally, and my gut was just all twisted up in a knot. And I remember I was in so much emotional pain. I said, I just can't stand it. I'm going to go home so I decided to go home and get cleaned up, and I'm going to go to the Maritone Steakhouse and just really tie one on. And I got to my apartment, and I remembered in Alcoholics Anonymous, they tell you to turn this over to God. And I got on my knees, and I didn't ask God to keep me sober. I asked God to remove this pain from my stomach. And, that pain lessened just enough where I was able to lay down and go to sleep. And, and I got up the next day and continued going to meetings. But, I have not had the obsession to drink since that night. And I feel like I'm really one of the fortunate ones, because I know a lot of people really struggle with this, still wanting to drink, And I've been going on 27 years now. But of course, I still had a lot of work to do, because like I told you, I didn't have a lick of sense before I got here, so I really had a lot of learning to do, and in a life, I had to change everything about my life. I got a sponsor, his name was Joe, and he took me through the steps. I've been married right now I've been married about 8 years, and I have a 6-year-old son. But before, I had the boy that was a year and a half at the time. He right now he's a Baltimore policeman. Just a few weeks ago, I went and watched him graduate from the Baltimore Police Academy. And he kind of grew up in Alcoholics Anonymous, and it was the people in Alcoholics Anonymous, that helped me raise that boy, because I was a single parent for many years. And, but I got to a point to where I wasn't going to that many AA meetings. A little over 4 years ago, I had taken up the sport of skydiving, and I've been skydiving for about 10 years. But anyway, I had a major skydiving accident, and it's put me in the hospital for 2 months, and I tore my femur clear in two, and I got damage to my spinal cord from C3 to C6, and so a lot of my body is all messed up. But when I hit the ground that day, and I couldn't move nothing but my eyelids, I realized there was one thing missing. I didn't even think about God. All the time I was laying there on the ground, like, God, please help me. It's just like I'd left God behind there for many years. But anyway, I ended up in several hospitals, airlifted to Loma Linda, and that's where they did all the surgeries. And I ended up going back to Glendale Adventist, and that's where I did my rehab. And I thank God for all the friends that I've made in Alcoholics Anonymous, because it seemed like I was continuously had company, which I loved, absolutely loved it. It really helped me get through those 2 months. So anyway, I am just extremely grateful that I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I still do 3 or 4 meetings a week. And because of Alcoholics Anonymous and the people in Alcoholics Anonymous, it's really given me a way of life, and I've been, like I said, I've been married for 8 years now, and it's going very well.
Steve is no longer on the inside of a jail cell, but on the inside of God's love, mercy, and grace. All this he found through the program of Alcoholics Anonymous.
And I am extremely grateful for the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, because it gave me a place to go, and I found my God here in Alcoholics Anonymous. That I just don't have to go in those bars anymore. And I was a daily bar drinker, and I was always out there looking for companionship. It was just extremely lonely out there, and in Alcoholics Anonymous, there's people just like me. We're all in here in this thing together. And we're making it. Like tomorrow morning, we have Friday mornings. A lot of my 3 or 4 of my friends, we take turns picking the restaurant that we're going to have breakfast at. And tomorrow morning, we're meeting over at Denny's there in Sunland at 7 o'clock. And it's just getting together with my buddies, and I've been able to do things on this program that there's no way I could have possibly done if I would have been out there still in the bars, and going to jails. And, I had 5 DUIs, I don't have to be out there worrying about the cops anymore, and I have insurance, and I have a wonderful business going, and I've had some wonderful experiences in sobriety. These friends I'm talking about, we did the Grand Canyon. We've hiked the Grand Canyon from the South Rim to the North Rim and back, which is like 50 miles. We've taken many bicycle trips, like from San Francisco to Glendale, and we did that like 7 years in a row. It's just wonderful adventures. My friend Dave that I'm having breakfast with tomorrow, taught me how to rock climb, and we used to take groups out of the Windsor Club and go to the Joshua Tree, and we learned how to rock climb. We had all the ropes, we bought all the gear. We just had a wonderful, wonderful time. And I was able to take my son and teach him how to rappel and to climb. And, it's just extremely, extremely grateful that, I've been able to do all of these things. And, it's because of the people in Alcoholics Anonymous and being able to stay sober. And I could have only have done it in Alcoholics Anonymous. Nothing else ever worked, The people in Alcoholics Anonymous, I absolutely love the people in Alcoholics Anonymous. It seems like we really care for each other, If any of you out there is having any kind of a problem, give Alcoholics Anonymous a shot, man, because it is the best deal in town. And I found my God here in Alcoholics Anonymous, that I just don't have to go in those bars anymore. And I was a daily bar drinker. And with that, I thank you for allowing me to share.
When the river runs dry, I find you. In desperate times, you find me. Where shall I run? Where shall I hide? No one knows me on the inside like you, like you, like you. Such a friend you've been in times of need. A love without end.
You've been listening to The Bottom Line, featuring Steve W. Story. Thank you, Steve, for caring enough to carry the message right here on this program we call The Bottom Line. This show is produced for American Forces Network worldwide. I'm Gary Thiemann. Until next time, God bless you, and carry the message, won't you? This has been a GRT production.